Hello everybody, and thanks for joining us on this last edition of Inside Africa for the week. Cameroon's Minister of Economy has received in audience the Sub-Saharan African Director of the French Development Agency in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. The two discussed about general evaluation of ongoing development projects in Cameroon, which are being supported by the agency. Marie-Goreti Wifengla tells us more.
The meeting between the two personalities took place in Yaoundé, Cameroon's capital city. It was indeed an opportunity for the French Development Agency, through the Director for Sub-Saharan Africa, Yves Boudou, to evaluate the different developmental projects currently going on in the country. Yves Boudou, during his encounter with the Cameroonian press, said Cameroon has been carrying on huge projects from 6 different sectors of principal concern.
And we have a long time of operations in the country. These operations have been strengthened since some years because of the cancellation of the debt. There has been a huge program called in French Contrat de désendettement et de développement. This huge program is covering 6 sectors, mainly, for example, urban development and roads, and have been implemented in your country, especially, for example, at the beginning in Douala and Yaoundé. So there is nowadays, Cameroon is one of the most important countries for operations of AFD, both with the program of CDD and also with sovereign loans, with non-sovereign loans, with grants and other operations with the private sector and also with banks.
Given that Cameroon is the first country in the world to have benefited from the goodwill of the French Development Agency, Yves Boudou added that so far he is satisfied with what has been achieved so far.
We are satisfied because it's certainly one of the main increase of operations in a country where we had a very light number of operations about 10 years ago, but nowadays it has been a huge increase of operations. Sometimes, you can see some delays in the realization of the operations. First of all, I have to say that we are only the donors financing operations. So we are working closely with the concerned ministries, with the concerned companies too, and so, the delays sometimes can appear.
After 50 years of partnership with the French Development Agency, the director concluded that they are satisfied and optimistic. To crown it all, they can only want the best for Cameroon.
Still in Cameroon, some government ministers have signed an agreement to ensure easy access for persons with disabilities into government buildings. The signing of the agreement Tuesday in the nation's capital, Yaoundé, was headed by the Minister of Social Affairs, Catherine Bakambok. Frida Egbe has the details.
The Republic of Cameroon counts close to 3 million handicapped persons all over the national territory. Unfortunately, this quarter of the nation's population happen to be confronted with marginalization of all sorts. Their challenges are many and ranges from no access to education and vocational training, access to information and participation in cultural activities, no access to employment, and no access to government infrastructures, housing, transport, just to name but these. It is for this reason that the Minister of Social Affairs, Catherine Bakambok, and a host of other government ministers have signed a combined memorandum ensuring persons with disabilities easy access to government infrastructures and in every domain of the society.
The different ministers has to ask their collaborators to take into consideration the different aspects of this document. We think that from tomorrow, we don't any longer have a building is built without taking into consideration the handicapped specificity.
According to Njipanje Ilyasu, National President of Students with Disabilities in Universities in Cameroon, every human being has rights and should be treated equally, be it the physically apt or handicapped persons.
This issue of accessibility into public infrastructure today is becoming crucial So far as you know, we have many children who cannot go to school because the environment is not usable, because the environment is not accessible. So I think this interministerial circular joint letter that has been signed by the Ministry of Public Health, Public Contract, Urban Development, and Public Works will help take into consideration the factor of accessibility.
He adds that signing the letter is one thing and respecting the stakes of the letter is another, so his expectations are very high.
What our expectations are nothing but that these letters that have been signed should be put into practice as soon as possible, so that the public infrastructures of our country should be accessible enough so as to build an inclusive society for all, and so as to help persons with disabilities contribute to the building of our country.
It should be noted that the signing of this letter is an adherence to the President's call for equal opportunities for all and social cohesion among the Cameroonian people on November 3, 2011. Also, the United Nations Convention relating to the rights of the handicapped persons. The ceremony ended with a family picture.
Over in Ghana, 70 persons with disabilities have been trained in various vocations and employment skills at Quanta. The 2-year program was jointly financed by World Vision International, the Quanta South District Assembly, and other organizations.
Physically challenged persons have special talents, which, when tapped, can help in the development of the nation. However, a section of the society misconstrued their limitations to mean inability. To correct this attitude of society, people with disability in the Nkwanta South District have formed a group called the Disability Self-Help Group Network. They solicit for support in the form of training in order to be empowered economically so that they can live lives of dignity. An appeal from the group attracted the attention of the World Vision International, which offered them a 2-year training in soap and pomade manufacturing, dressmaking, batik tie and dye, hairdressing, beekeeping and capacity building and advocacy training. The president of the Disability Self-Help Group Network, Jacob Amwa, mentioned accommodation and funding as some of the challenges they face.
We admit certain challenges that the Disability Self-Help Group Network has faced as an organization, such as logistics, office accommodation, etc. I therefore use this opportunity through the chairman to appeal to individuals, organizations, stakeholders, philanthropists to support Disability Self-Help Group Network and persons with disability in general to live an independent and sustainable life.
The Nkwanta South District Public Health Nurse, Edith Amuti, called for the empowerment of people with disabilities so that they can realize their full potential and maximize their economic emancipation. The Nkwanta South DCE, Joseph Nikap, assured the World Vision International that the Assembly would partner them to sustain and promote such laudable programs. The Nkwanta South District Manager of the World Vision International, Florence Cote, said they would continue to do more for people with disabilities.
Now, mobile phones are being used to detect fake medicine being sold in Nigeria. Customers send a text message to the country's drug enforcement agency and get a reply informing the medicine's authenticity.
Neka is buying Amatem, an anti-malaria drug, at her local pharmacy in Yaba, Lagos. There are many fake anti-malaria drugs on the market here, but thanks to a new technology, she can check whether the drug is genuine using her mobile phone. All Neka has to do is text a number on the packaging to the Drug Enforcement Agency. Within seconds, she gets a reply telling her whether the drug is fake or real.
The innovation is a very good one. It's very good. Because before now, we walk into a pharmacy, you buy a drug, you're not sure of the genuinity of the drug. And what you know is that you bought the drug and you walk out. But now, on your own, without anybody's assistance, you can actually know the genuinity of what you're buying.
Staff at Nigeria's National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control in Yaba are behind the new technology. They spend hundreds of hours a week trying to detect fake drugs by testing them in laboratories. But it's not been enough to stop fake drugs getting into the country, and that's why the mobile phone technology has been introduced.
We decided to resort to technology because, like I told you, with the sophistication in printing technology, the counterfeiters have become more sophisticated. The counterfeiters can copy and make copies of the genuine product that looks exactly like the genuine product.
The technology is not only available for anti-malaria drugs like Amatem, it's also used on antibiotics too. Some drug manufacturers in Lagos are concerned about how successful the mobile detection system might be.
My major concern really is that of availability. One, how much of the end users have access to telephone? It's mainly in the cities, yet malaria does not respect location.
Consumers may be willing to pay more for their drugs so they can check whether they are real or fake, but they'll also want the Drug Enforcement Agency to improve its surveillance at Nigeria's ports so that fake drugs don't get into the country.
We bring you more news from Nigeria now. Absence of sustainable development strategies and abandonment of projects have been identified as some factors that will hinder the realization of Vision 2020. This is the view of stakeholders at a dialogue on a federal infrastructure development program organized by NGOs in Abuja.
The dialogue is aimed at finding the connection between development documents such as Vision 2020, 7-point agenda and transformation agenda budget made in the last 3 to 4 years and the level of implementation. Stakeholders at the workshop observed that there are some levels of disconnect between the budget and the documents which pose questions on the reported growth.
Found out some level of undue ambition. You have only say for instance ₦1 trillion, and you are bringing in projects that will cost 10 trillion.
When there are duplications in budget reallocation for these various projects, then it becomes a serious issue for implementation and waste of resources.
Stakeholders recommended that for the country to attain the desired infrastructure, there is need to adopt public-private partnership in executing some projects to save the country from excess spending. They were also of the view that lawmakers should embark on results-oriented monitoring, evaluation, and auditing to checkmate duplication of projects in budgets.
Let's move over to Kenya, where a day after the teacher strike was called off, learning seemingly did not take place in most places. The schools are officially closed according to a government directive, but some teachers and some pupils somehow went to school.
After a 23-day strike by teachers, the government's directive to close all public primary schools and the decision to call off the strike by the Kenya National Union of Teachers has thrown schools into confusion.
The situation is a bit confusing because the attendance is not all that good.
Teachers, pupils and parents caught between whose word to take, the government's or not.
We are here to obey our union. Why? Because while we are on strike, we have been insisting that only the union will direct us.
At the DEB primary school in Bungoma, teachers reported to work. The pupils too are in school early. Teaching resumed despite the government's directive on the closure of schools. In Kisumu, at the MM Shah Primary School, pupils reported back to school, but their teachers were nowhere to be seen. The pupils took matters into their own hands. In some schools, neither pupils nor their teachers were in sight. In Kiambu County, at the Ndumberi Primary School, pupils who reported back to school took time to play as others tried to make up for lost time. Here, more than half of the pupils did not show up, just like their teachers. In most schools in Meru County, pupils were back in class, but their teachers were missing in action.
Niliamka asubuhi 5:30 nikuja shule kusoma na walimu bado hawajafika, ni mwalimu mmoja tu ako shule.
Many pupils were forced to go back home after waiting for their teachers who did not show up, and some standard 8 pupils have a message for the government.
Mr. President, get this from us clear. We are not happy at all.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor Jacob Kaimenyi on Wednesday said the government will ensure adequate arrangements are made to address the situation for KCPE candidates.
KCP comes once, and they will not set KCP easy because we were not at school.
With pupils having lost 3 weeks of teaching time, analysts say the candidates may not have a level playing field in the national exams with pupils in private schools. As the government seeks ways to make up for lost time, the education calendar may be disrupted yet again, the second time in as many years. Last year, the government postponed the commencement dates for national exams due to the teachers' strike. Only months after the calendar normalized, it may be back to square one.
Away from Kenya, let's now make a stop in Uganda, where our Member of Parliament, Ndunga Otto, is set to table a private member's bill on alcohol control. The bill, if successful, will see the sale of alcohol prohibited before 5 p.m. and after 3 a.m. Otto says alcohol is one of the leading reasons that communities in northern Uganda are disintegrating and having poor attitudes.
This is not the first time a ban on alcohol packaged in sachets is being proposed. In 2009, the Ministries of Trade and that of Health clashed over the ban, with the former being the instigator of the halt of trade in distilled liquor packaged in plastic bags. These followed reports that alcohol laced with poison had claimed about 50 lives in Kampala, Wakiso and Mpigi, Kasese and Gulu districts and left dozens of others blind. While then Trade Minister Kahinda Otafire was for regulating the industry, the then State Minister for Health, Dr. Richard Nduhura, wanted alcohol in sachets banned indefinitely. Uganda, which tops the drinking scale in Africa, is one of those countries where drinking hours are unlimited. Aru County MP Odonga Oto says the trend is harmful to the country and must be addressed. He is set to table a private member's bill on alcohol control.
All bars must be prohibited and not allowed to sell alcohol before 5 p.m. This is already happening in Kenya. We will make it illegal. We will make it an offense for anyone to open a bar and sell alcohol before 5 p.m. 2, I'm bringing amendments to the effect that no alcoholic drink should be sold in sachets.
An unamused Oto says it is unfortunate that the promotion of these drinks continues, even when they are to the detriment of the quality of life of Ugandans.
You see how many people are dying in the country. And the Indians are all over Uganda selling alcohol in sachets, making promotions. So this bill seeks to prohibit anyone producing or packaging drinks in caveras and sachets.
The one-time fiery legislator admits that the scope of the problem is big, even eating into the education sector.
We will avoid situations where teachers go to school riding bicycles with sachets in the pocket. Young children are actually even drinking sachets because it is easily portable.
As for the men out there, you will want to listen to this carefully.
The men are now not men. Men are failing to perform their conjugal duties in their families, because their entire energy is taken up by this alcohol in sachets. So my hope is that within 3 or 4 months, this bill would become law and we have sanity returning into Uganda.
I support it because it's not an inconvenience to people who work late hours.
Suppose I have a Korosa woman at home and I'm done with my work by midday and I want to take my time somewhere, then I go home late. How can I? I can decide to go and sit somewhere to take my drinks and I go home late.
Apparently, the bill will go on to serve all Ugandans, whatever their social status, but most especially those with low incomes.
Even the parliamentary canteen, there is a bar upstairs. It will be prohibited for them to sell alcohol to members during the day. But the people I am targeting are actually not only members of parliament. They are the local drinkers in the villages. That I know now that they are even looking at me. They could be having a sachet in their hands.
In neighboring Kenya, a similar move, however, achieved a backlash. A Kenyan MP, John Mututho, formerly representing Naivasha, is said to have lost his parliamentary seat due to his vehement campaign against illicit alcohol and the regulation of drinking hours in Kenya. But the dangers are real here at home, with some of these formerly famous Kayunga 5 now gone as a result of alcohol.
Moving on, countries within the East Africa region are working fast to beat the digital migration deadline set for 2015, subjects that will affect millions of households if implemented haphazardly.
Delegates drawn from Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda and Burundi are deliberating on the best way in implementing the broadcasting move from analog to digital. The digital migration has been the talk for a while, and it is expected to set in motion a new dimension to how TV broadcasting is done.
Most of our governments are at an advanced stage of allocating the digital dividends. We are confident that the additional spectrum will further contribute to economic and social development of our region by providing a variety of multimedia applications such as mobile telemedicine, e-learning, and e-government services.
Kenya is yet to pick its switch-off date, which has been altered several times in recent months after the Consumer Federation of Kenya sought a court order blocking the Communications Commission of Kenya from implementing the switch-off. COFEC was opposed to the migration to take place as a majority of TV owners are yet to purchase the necessary gadgets. The migration will require TV owners to acquire a set-top box, a gadget to be used in receiving signals for them to watch the various TV channels. Consumers have decried the high cost of the set-top boxes, which retail for an average of 4,000 shillings, an amount not in the reach of many.
Ni afford itabidi nimejifinya side nyingine. So wakitakubadilisha, I think maybe serikali subsidize your amount.
At least they should see if there is a way they can cushion the local mwananchi, because you know it's not everybody who can just afford 4,000 shillings.
We're not ready to part with 4,000 for entertainment. I'd rather buy food than yes.
Tanzania is the only country in East Africa that has so far switched to digital broadcasting. In that country, though, there have been complaints about a disorganized switch over. The conference will also make recommendations as to how the digital migration should be conducted across the region and the specific dates the migration will kick off.
In Egypt, security is tight in the already volatile Sinai Peninsula. Extremists have increased their attack on police and army forces in the peninsula, especially in the north of Sinai, following a military coup which ousted President Mohamed Morsi.
The ongoing turmoil in Egypt is taking its deadliest form in the Sinai Peninsula. Attacks by militants have dramatically increased since the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi. In the latest development, Egyptian media have reported that 10 militants were killed over the past 48 hours in an army offensive against militants in the north of Sinai.
I think that Friday, which is the 10th of Ramadan and marks the anniversary of the 1973 victory over Israel, will be the 0 hour for the army to purge the Sinai Peninsula from all the extremists and jihadi hotspots who have intentionally killed dozens of police officers.
The media report came after 3 officers were killed in separate attacks. Daily deadly assaults on the joint army-police forces in the north of Sinai have been taking place since the ouster of Morsi on July 3rd. Army reinforcements have now reached the area. Apache helicopters are also surveying the North Sinai. Israel has given the go-ahead to an Egyptian request to increase forces in the border area. The Camp David peace treaty between Egypt and Israel stipulates that Sinai is kept as a demilitarized zone. But Israel said it is allowing the additional forces and reinforcements in hope that Egypt will be able to curb militants in the area. The people of Sinai have consistently complained of marginalization and underdevelopment, in addition to a bitter legacy of police brutality since the days of Mubarak, all of which have aided for Sinai becoming a hotspot for lawlessness and militancy.
And that report brings us to the end of this edition of Inside Africa. Thanks for always taking our time to be with us, and don't forget to join us again Monday for a new edition of the program. Until then, have a blessed weekend in the company of programs on Afrique Media.